Okay, do you have any questions? Well, no questions, so we'll be silent. Yes, Barbara, yes. Just let me put you. Yes. Good to see you. You're muted. Try to unmute you.
There.
Yes. Yes. Hi.
Okay. I came across something that something of Jean Klein's that somebody posted that if you could expound on it, I'd appreciate it. And it is this quote. He says, "This emptiness refers to something of which we are empty, not to emptiness itself. Do you see the difference?" Yes, I think I see the difference. But the next sentence says, "When you understand it, visualize it. It is important that we represent this understanding very often. In visualizing this emptiness, it goes in our total structure. We are this emptiness." It sounds like a koan to me. Visualize this emptiness.
Can you read that again?
This emptiness refers to something of which we are empty and not to emptiness itself. Do you see the difference? When you understand it, visualize it. It is important that we represent this understanding very often. In visualizing this emptiness, it goes in our total structure. We are this emptiness.
Yeah, the first sentence, say again the first sentence, because sentence that's the one I have to think about.
Well, he must have been referring to something because he says, this emptiness refers to something of which we are empty and not to emptiness itself.
It refers to something of which we are empty and not to emptiness. Yeah, what? Yes, yes. What he means is this. He was using often the following analogy. He would say, let's assume you have visited this friend many times, and in the living room, there is a painting in a given place. One day you visit the friend and the painting is no longer there. What you notice is the absence of the painting. You don't see, in a sense, the wall. You see the absence of the painting. So this metaphor he uses to describe two different kinds of emptiness. The first kind of emptiness is the absence of object. And the absence of object is still an object.
Right.
You see, absence of the painting is not the reality of the wall. And then he was talking about the absence of the absence. Then the absence of the painting disappears and you see the wall. It's a metaphor, right? And it's in reference to what he used to call also the blank state. The blank state is when we try to visualize consciousness. we first try to visualize it as some kind of a, let's say, for instance, a white wall, you see, or something like that. But this visualization is still an object, is still a perception in the mind, you see. It's not the experience of that which perceives the object.
So when he's speaking about visualizing, he's talking about more going to the experience rather than a perception, a conceived perception of
in a sense, the way to visualize consciousness is to understand that it cannot be visualized.
Okay, that's why it was like a koan. It was like visualize emptiness. So it's like, oh, a cat's whisker in the sunlight. You know, it just makes the mind fall.
Yeah. So he was talking about the absence of the absence, which is a kind of double negation.
Right.
And he was mentioning that, for instance, in the Sufi tradition, where the word fana means the dissolution or the disappearance, is a little bit the same word as pralaya in Sanskrit. The Sufi would speak of the double fana, the fana of the fana, if you will, the extinction or the dissolution of the dissolution itself. So the first fana, or the first dissolution, or the first pralaya, is the absence of objects. Right. But this absence of object is still a mind object. And then, but this mind object itself, because it has no real intrinsic qualities, is more conducive to the experience of the background of consciousness than a richer object. Are you following me?
Yes, yes, I am.
So that's what he says then. That's why in the second part of his statement, he mentions that, well, we can go back to this visualization, let's say, of a blank state or a blank wall, provided we have been instructed that that is still an object.
Still an object.
Because this blank wall is boring somehow. It has no quality, and it cannot have any quality. Consciousness has no quality, and then we realize, but that's me. I am being aware in this moment of whatever this visualization of consciousness, which is not consciousness itself. Yes. You know, so it leads to a glimpse. So also, if we connect that to the tantric tradition of Kashmiri Shaivism, if we look at the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, which is one of the holy books of this tradition, which is divided in various tantric tricks, if you will, that various ways to take us to the glimpse of our true nature. One of them is to contemplate an empty space, like you are in the mountain. You contemplate the emptiness in front of you. And this emptiness, in turn, which is still an object, right? But it's an object which is more conducive, takes us to the real emptiness of the real shunya, if you will.
Yes.
Consciousness.
Like sky gazing. Yeah.
That's why when you are in love with truth, you enjoy this, you enjoy to be in the sky, or you enjoy the emptiness. People who are not, I remember one day I was shopping for houses in my area, which, you know, in the Luz, before we bought this house on top of the mountain. So there was an open house, and it was an open house with a very distant views, beautiful views on top over here. And there were several people there in the garden waiting for the realtor to arrive and open the house. And a lady came with her daughter, I remember, and she looks and she immediately left saying, oh, I could never live here. This space is so frightening to me. You know, I freak out, you see.
Oh.
And in my case, is that which I wanted. I wanted
Right.
that. You know, this beauty, you feel this expansion, you know,
Yes.
you kind of lose the borders of the body.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Lovely. Lovely to see you.
Good to see you, Barbara. Yes. Hi,
Hi,
Joseph.
Francis. Hi. Yesterday, you said something about gratitude that I thought was, there goes our dog. I thought was very interesting. That in a real way, the experience of gratitude is the experience of your true self. And I've been thinking a lot about a similar theme, which is innocence. And you've said that we are all essentially innocent. And recently I was reading in, I think it was one of your books, that the experiences in life, the universe brings us back to innocence, or leads us to innocence, which is interesting because we start with innocence, we forget that we're innocent, and we're reintroduced to it by the experiences in our life in a certain way. Does it sound right so far?
Absolutely.
And when I felt like a glimpse, I felt it as this return to innocence. And also gratitude is there as well, but this feeling of openness and freshness and not being tainted by the sort of negative memories and flaws and mistakes of my life, looking at my family, my jobs, different things, different vices I've had, things like that. None of that really matters. And I just wonder if you might say a little more about innocence, because it feels to me like a key that if we can, well, we could talk about forgiving ourselves, but that just sounds new agey. To me, it's like, it isn't about forgiving oneself, it's about realizing oneself and getting to one's true self, which has always been innocent. But the universe seems to always be reminding us of why we're not innocent, of the things that we did wrong and that come back to haunt us, and problems that occur from mistakes in the past. So I just wonder if you could shed a little more light on that, or if you have any thoughts about that idea.
Yes. I think if we look at the word innocence, it has two meanings, two different meanings. And the key to a deep understanding of our innocence lies in the understanding of the connection between these two meanings. The first meaning is, if you will, the etymological meaning of the word innocence, which means something which is not a nuisance, you know, or someone who is not, in other words, someone who is not dangerous, someone who is not going to do us harm, someone innocent, that's the way we receive it, right? Is someone who is not dangerous. For instance, imagine a young puppy. A young puppy is not going to bite us. A growling German shepherd, we wouldn't feel this dog as innocent, right? But a young puppy, you know, ready to lick us, and that's, we feel the innocence there. So something which is not dangerous, not aggressive, something which is loving in a sense. Love attracts love. The young puppy loves us. We love the young puppy. There is an absence of barrier, an absence of aggression. The other meaning of the word is not guilty, right? I am innocent of the crime. I'm not guilty. Why? So that relates to the fact that we don't choose our decisions ultimately. Everything is an act of God. So all the past actions, we are innocent, we are not guilty in that sense, you see. So everything is the act of God. There is nobody there having made the choices. God made all the choices. There is nobody that is guilty. Everybody is innocent because there is no such a separate entity. There is universal innocence. But in this universal innocence, everything is me, you see? And if everything is me, there is only one reality, it's also love. So that's how the two meanings of the word innocence get reconciled in this understanding of the fundamental non-duality.
Okay. Unlike you, I was not raised atheist. I was raised Catholic.
Oh, so you're guilty. You're,
Yes,
you're, a,
exactly.
you're a sinner.
And
You're a sinner. So unlike you, I'm not going to burn in hell forever.
yes, well, hopefully I'm joining your club. But I remember, and I stopped being a Catholic like when I was, well, before I was 20, but as a child, I remember this feeling of confession and how good it would feel, like the guilt was taken away. And it's very freeing. And it's, well, obviously the whole thing is a bad deal because you're making an agreement with some other that is God that you're going to be better. And so now you're innocent for a while until you do something wrong again, and then you have to go back to confession. But
yeah, it's like the Ponzi scheme. Give me your money right now, and I give you 10 times later. If it's 10 times, it is suspicious.
Right. But you know, the reason I mention it is because it's such a weight to be taken off of you at that moment. It's just such a relief and release to just feel clean, and your eyes are open and you're open to things. And I still remember that from my childhood and other moments that weren't related to confession. We are more innocent when we're children. So it's just, you know, now at our age, to my age, to reconnect with that feeling is sort of the essence of non-duality in terms of the connection with my real self, the way I sense it.
It could be said that non-duality gives you the absolute absolution, the absolute absolution, you know, because over there you have to go back, you know, and keep confessing.
Dreaming Brothers?
Please.
Oh, you did that already. Fabulous.
I'm muting everybody here. We have interference. Yes, here it's absolute absolution because you didn't do anything, God did everything. We are responsible in the now from the situation as this universal consciousness. But the past, there is not a separate entity that has created the past. It's all the ways the universe moves, you see. So it's an absolute, it's a real absolution, because absolution means absolute, right? Not relative, not dependent upon the next confession.
Like not judging the judge.
Right. And it's an absolution we give to ourselves. We don't need someone else to give it.
Well,
It's
I think that's the key, because in the moment when you're watching your body mind act in the bad old ways that it does, to just let go of that and still give yourself absolution, even while it's happening, is the beginning of the end for the separate self.
In this case, you see, I could say that the real confession is happening in the now. The real confession is to try to do the right thing at every moment, you know, and then forget about the past mistakes, because God made them for you. And but in the now, you're God, and you try to to live in accordance with the truth. That's really the way to live our lives. Not worrying about the past, not worrying about the future, and trying to implement the truth in our lives in the now, because that's the only place where it can get implemented the best you can. And we are not perfect. Mistakes are made, but they are made by God, so it doesn't matter.
Absolute absolution.
Yeah, absolute absolution.
Great. Thank you, Francis.
Yes, Harsha. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Francis. Very good to see you as well. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So nice to be with you again. I saw no more hands, so I thought I'll just go for it. So yeah. So starting out, like I had a question, from a long time. I've been just working on it, like with experience and after listening to you and understanding things. So I thought, why not just put it out to you? So first, going with it is the meaning of the word real, like experientially, it is only consciousness, right? Like even when we use general terms or, is this for real, or like trying to just figure out or experience the meaning of what the word real really points to, it has like no other identifier or pointer except for consciousness, right? Like it's just consciousness which gives meaning to the word real.
Well, definitely it is consciousness that gives meaning to the word real, and the word real appears in consciousness. And then our experience starts with consciousness. So in our human experience, consciousness is primeval. Without consciousness, there is no experience. But then we experience things. Whatever these things are, we could call them perceptions, or behind the perceptions, we can call it a world, other people, objects, beings, things. And then the question arises, so there is, as a result of there being things, there is something rather than nothing. There is existence, there is being, you see. And the word being or reality, because when I use the word reality, it's in the sense of being, that which truly is, that which truly exists. In other words, that which makes things, that which creates things, than that in which things, that from which things derive their existence. It could be called also the thingness of things. And that's etymologically the meaning of reality. The word res in Latin means things. And realitas, reality, means the thingness of things. It doesn't mean the set of all things. Although it could be argued that the set of all things is not the same. Just as a set of all sets is not a set, but that's a different, don't worry about my difference. So, the reality of things is not a thing. So, and then the question arises, what is the connection between the consciousness and the reality? You see, experientially, you cannot have the reality without having the consciousness, right? And on the other hand, if there is something deeper than the consciousness that perceives, if there is a reality to consciousness, which is other than consciousness, it would be this reality that truly perceives, you see. So when we look at it that way, and if we define then consciousness as the reality that perceives, that which truly perceives, that which really perceives. You know, we go through these equivalencies, the reality that perceives. If there is only one reality, then the reality that perceives and the reality of all things is going to be the same. I use this type of argument to deconstruct the belief that consciousness is limited. The first thing to understand is that we have no experiential evidence that consciousness is limited. But we can move a little beyond that. The moment we somehow accept that there is only one reality. I cannot, you see, the beauty is I cannot even clearly define what reality is. Because if I would define it, I would define it starting from somewhere. starting from some axiom, from other concept. And I would never, you see, it's like when you look in the dictionary, you look for the meaning, let's say, of the word concept. You go to the Webster dictionary and say concept, and you see concept, oh, notion. You say, oh, interesting. You go to the dictionary, you look notion, and it says concept. You see what I mean? We have to start somewhere. It's not like it's the same thing in mathematics. We have to start with some axioms, right? But where do we get them from? You see, there is, at the beginning of everything, there is some experiential background. And if we think of what is the background, the experiential background of all backgrounds, if you will, it's consciousness. It has to be real. If it is not, nothing is real. You see? And on the other hand, if there is only one reality, the reality that perceives has to be this one reality. You see? So we can move back and forth in this way between consciousness and reality. And the more we move back and forth between these two certainties, that there is consciousness and that there is something rather than nothing, the more we get convinced that they are one and the same. You see, in this back and forth process, we get rid of the belief systems we have accumulated, according to which consciousness is limited and dependent upon the body, once we define it as that which is really hearing these words in this moment. And that which is really hearing these words in this moment is what we call I. It is not somebody else. You see, it's I, it's our true being, our Atman, our. And as to the reason why there is only one reality, you know, I cannot prove it to you. Any more that I can prove to you that you are conscious. So all my words are doing, they cannot prove something rationally because it would require some basis to start from, some axioms or some holy book, because then we take it for granted. Jesus has said that, or Krishna has said that. We take it for granted, and then from that we can derive conclusions. But then it is based upon a fundamental belief system that the Bhagavad Gita says the truth, which it does. But we have to verify it on our own. And that the book doesn't help. The book just points, just as I'm pointing. My words are pointing, they are not the reality they point out. But hopefully, at some point they make sense and we say yes. We don't know why we say yes, but we say yes. If I say, you are conscious, and you say yes, why do we say that? We don't know. It's so deep that the source of our yes is invisible to the mind. You see, that's the beauty of it. It is there. It is like the invisible source of everything we see. And it's normal because it's us. If you think about it, this analogy, the physical eye, EYE, has never seen itself directly. It's impossible. We have never seen our own eyes. We have seen their image in a picture, or we have seen their reflection in the mirror. That's it. but directly impossible. In the same way, the mind cannot see the consciousness that sees the mind. So consciousness has to see itself directly somehow. You see, that's the source of true knowledge. That's the source from which we know there is consciousness, there is reality, there is something rather than nothing. How do we know consciousness is real? You see? In other words, we are not making it up. We're not dreaming it. Because it is the precondition for any dream. The dreamer cannot get dreamed. Vishnu dreams the dream, but in fact, Vishnu doesn't see Vishnu and Ananta. That's a story for the children. No. I hope I am not disappointing our Hindu friends here. Yeah.
Yeah, not at all, Francis. It's, you actually, the way you use these expressions and tools, like using even from the Hindu side of things, then it's actually the real meaning why any sage had, put it out to convey something. So, that kind of hits back through you when you put things like that. So, and you hit the nail right on its head, saying, like the problem of trying to define reality, that's where the thing came from, that you need to have an axiom, you need to have a basis from which I can say, oh, like this is what real really means. This is what I can, in a way, just something solid, something substantial. And it's very true. I don't know why I say that I'm conscious, but I cannot ever deny it.
You see, there is something in science that we experience is primeval in science. You can have a beautiful theory, but if you have no scientific, no experiential or experimental verification, you can trash it right away, right? So we have this deep connection between reality and experience. You see what I mean? There is
Absolutely,
a deep connection between reality and experience. I'd be convinced of it if I really can experience it. So, but we still have a division between experience and reality, which is, you see, we still see reality as an object, like a big black box full of smaller black boxes that are connected with each other. And inside each small black box, there is another black box, right? Yeah. And so that's our vision of reality is still something out there, but which has to be experienced. It is very difficult to take the next step to see reality equals experience. We see experience as a validation of reality, right?
Right,
But
yeah.
we have not taken the next step, which is a spiritual step, to see, well, it's not that experience is smaller than reality in a sense, or less important than reality. Because we deeply know that it is experience that validates reality. So we cannot validate the plus using something lesser. Only a king can make a king, in a sense. You follow what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
So
yeah.
if consciousness makes reality a king, consciousness has to be a king. In science, we see consciousness as a little thing, right? Emergent from this system here, right? And this little thing emerging from this system is going through experience to determine the big thing, to validate or invalidate. Hey, how is that possible? Right? So the next step, which is very important, is the equation. It's not that experience is less than reality. The first step is to see that it is less or equal. Because if it is less, strictly less than reality, it cannot validate reality, right? So we have to admit that experience is at least less or equal, you know? So on the other hand, we have to prove that it is greater than or equal, and then it is the same, right?
Yeah, I totally follow you on that. Yes, and it's pretty miraculous, and very serendipitous as well, that on hearing certain things, you feel like you experience that, but you weren't just able to express it. And somebody who say, somebody like you, and they say it, it's like, it just hits the nail right on its head. So totally, I'll get you on that. Thanks for that, Francis. So beautiful. There was one more thing, like just connected to this. I'll just put it through. And so this was connected to nothing ever happening, and same coming through from an axiomatic basis. For anything to happen, there is no kind of a pre-definition or a pre-ground in any phenomenal terms for it. Why something is happening, or what even we mean by happening. So I wanted to ask, from consciousness's perspective, does nothing ever happen?
From the consciousness perspective, consciousness is happening, if you will. Consciousness is a happening. In other words, the best analogy I could use, I mean, not the best, but the one that is coming to mind is the analogy of the ocean. Is the ocean happening or not? Well, on one hand, we could say the ocean is not happening. The ocean is there. The Atlantic Ocean is there between Europe, Africa on one side, and the Americas on the other side. It's not happening, it's just sitting there. On the other hand, we could say, oh, wow, the waves are there, the tempests, the temperature changes, the currents, there is movement. So the ocean is happening. You see, it depends how we look at it. If we look at it, and it's the same here with reality, is reality happening or not? There is a a beautiful quote by Jesus in the Thomas Gospel, where Jesus is asked by his disciples, what is the light? What is the light of consciousness? What is the light of reality? And he says, it's a movement and a repose. It's both. Like the ocean, it's a movement, it's a happening and not a happening. Another way to look at it is this. The totality, the reality, cannot move somewhere else. You're following me? Because if there was another place where it could move, it wouldn't be the totality. There would be something external to it, okay? And just as it cannot really move in space, it cannot move in time in the same way. It cannot, meaning in itself, it cannot evolve, because if it could move in time, the same argument would apply. There would be another place in time, right? That is not here yet, so to speak. So there would be something else than this reality. The reality has to encompass. In other words, it has to be timeless, or it has to be eternal. So from that vantage point, it doesn't evolve. You see, just as there is no other place in time, in space, because there is nothing other than this reality. There is than this totality. There is no other place in time. It's interesting to start with the space, because it's easier to visualize with the space. With time, it's more difficult. But then when we understand the kind of space-time equivalency, then we can also understand the eternity of reality. So in that sense, it doesn't change, it doesn't evolve. But within itself, it manifests all kinds of locations, all kinds of spaces, and all kinds of evolutions. And here the possibilities are infinite. Perhaps there are more universes, perhaps there are more dimensions. Why? When we look already at this universe, you know, it's kind of extraordinary. At least the part we know, which is very tiny compared to whatever is out of our light cone.
Yeah, I agree with you, Francis. And even I think like just whatever we have access to, whatever we touch, whatever we see, it's extraordinary. It's like you see the source happening all the time, and it's infinite already, like just the way it appears.
And when you understand that, you know, the beauty is that we don't need, you know, people, for example, people, they say, okay, I have this limited existence between birth and death. And I want to experience everything. I want a multiplicity of experience. I want to visit all the places in the world. I want to taste all the foods in the world. You know, I want to see all the museums. I want to play all the sports, you know, and if I miss only one of those, I'll be miserable. You see, but it's impossible. There is not enough time, and it's too exhausting, you know. And that's a huge mistake, because with every moment, with the little window we have the totality, because we are the totality. You see, if we could only be with the moment, it would be like a child going to the movie. Instead of enjoying the movie, he wants to see another movie, another movie, another movie. No, stay with the movie. The movie is for you. It's there unfolding at every moment. It's perfect. There is no need to go somewhere else. If we go somewhere else, we miss this movie, which is our movie, you see. And it doesn't matter that we have access to reality through this human channel, through a very narrow window, a very narrow spectrum, you know, electromagnetic spectrum, spectrum of audio frequencies, etc. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. Amazing what we do, right? With this, right? With our instruments, right? With the Webb telescopes and later on the gravitational wave telescope. I mean, it's amazing, but still, even with these instruments, lost in our little grain of sand here in the universe, you know, what can we know? It's beautiful, so that's why it's enjoyable. I mean, it's enjoyable to do science, right? It's beautiful,
yeah.
But we should keep our sense of proportions, right?
Yeah, not like going beneath the plank's length, you know, you cannot go beyond that. And even when we look at the tiny part, like the descriptions of it, like whatever the physicists have come to know of, so it's so huge in and by itself, you know, so many electrons, molecules going at such high speeds, it's almost incomprehensible, like how it really looks like, even when we say dive into the tiniest part of things, it's infinite also over there. Like wherever we look at, it's infinity, it seems.
Well, it's quite exotic the way this little thing behaves.
Yeah, agree with you, Francis. So you describe it just so beautifully. And so just one final thing, it was the question, what, you know, like which the mind puts, or, you know, the question what, which appears in consciousness, it's not answerable, right? Because the answer is infinite, which is not expressible. We can just point to it, point to the experience of it, but it's not answerable, right?
Yeah, in a sense, the question what is a false question, because it tries to formulate what is, and what is at every moment cannot be formulated. You know, the metaphor I use is this metaphor of this great pianist playing this beautiful Chopin piece. And then this person goes and asks this artist, it was beautiful, but what did you intend to say? You know? And the artist says, I meant to say exactly this. And he starts the same piece from the beginning. Because the music is not the explanation of the music. The what of the music is the experience of the music itself, not the word we can add to it. And it is the same thing with the reality, with this universe. The what of it is not the laws of physics or the explanations we have. The what of it is what it is, the experience of it.
Beautiful, Francis. Thank you. Thank you so much for the answers. Lovely hearing them.
Hey, hi, Iliana.
Hello, Francis. Wow, with the harshest question, I've had several wow moments, glimpses, I guess. Very beautiful. So thank you for that. I raised my hand because there were no other hands raised, and my question, I don't know, is very, let's say, referring to what happened this morning, the meditation. During the meditation, when you show us nature, I have no questions, but today you showed us a work of art, and I have never seen it before. And I wonder if you could introduce us a little bit to what I saw. It was a woman kneeling in front of some authority. It seemed like a king, and I couldn't make out what.
Yeah, I can show it to you again.
Okay.
I hope it works. It's this painting over there.
Yes.
Well, it's simple. It's King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba.
Ah, okay. With that.
So the king is sitting on the throne, and the queen is there. And you can see she used her fingers, and she's counting on the finger. I guess she's argumenting, and she has number 1, number 2, number 3. And on the floor, you can see all kinds of jewelry that she has brought as presents to the king. So, and the audience is there, you know, kind of listening. So to me, it's kind of satsang, you know, because Solomon is a sage, right? And the queen comes and argue, and finally they agree. And people out there, very natural. Yeah, it's an old painting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, this this makes reference to is the relationship between people, between two. And what comes to mind right now is that I put into practice the experience that you suggested yesterday, that we are, like, it's the universe speaking to the universe when we encounter other people. If we have that in mind, what happens? And I put that into practice with some difficult relationships that I was going to have dinner with yesterday. And I have to say, it really made a big difference. The whole presence, my presence there, and what happened completely changed. It was a lovely evening, whereas other times I have had to bear it in some way. So I wanted to say thank you for that. And I love when you give us specific things to practice, because sometimes you say, well, do it, you know, test it, but sometimes I don't know how to test it. So when you give us specific things to try out, I wanted to share that I tested it, and it was really great. And it was a very difficult thing I mean, this is a family relationship, so it's been wonderful. So you were just going to say something.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that practice. It's more experimentation, you know, to conduct experiment. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, since there are no questions, oh no. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Francis. There was a moment during the meditation, well, at the very end, in which you kind of brought the contrast. You said, bring your attention now to a thought or a poem.
To what?
Bring your attention to a poem or a thought. You were about to finish the meditation, and to my understanding, you were trying to bring a contrast between the spaciousness that you have helped us or brought us into moving into the activities that we were going to engage. And I appreciated that. And I read something in one of the books of Ian Klein that says, when an object is recognized as an expression of consciousness, its substance dissolves into knowledge, leaving silence, peace, lucidity. This light is always there before the object appears. Divided relative knowledge appears and disappears in undivided consciousness. Thus, the appearance of objects is discontinuous, but consciousness is constant. And then finishes by saying, objective knowledge dies away into pure consciousness, global consciousness, and sooner or later, you become established in it. And I was thinking that sometimes when I move on into physical activity or whatever is required, and I lose the trace of this sense of expansion, it has helped me to read in this passage that he says consciousness is constant, and that objective knowledge, or not objective knowledge, but the activities that we experience where we get a little bit lost, they come as a flashes of impressions and experiences that are not constant. And maybe if I try to sense more what it feels like, the sense of constant, of consciousness, I may be able not to get lost as much in the activity. Am I making myself clear?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, I really like that he said consciousness is constant, but the appearance of objects is discontinuous. Of course, then it comes into saying that you embrace it, right? That you embrace it with consciousness in a state of lucid and clear being. But in between, when one is in between activities and a little bit getting disengaged from this sense of expansion, maybe if I could sense more the flavor of this constant consciousness, I may be able to trace it back a little bit more.
Well, it starts with the understanding that it is always present.
It's always present.
Because then we can remind ourselves of this understanding. So it takes us back to,
Yes.
to this reality.
Yes.
The distinction I would make between what we were doing this morning at the end and what I think Jean Klein, it was Jean Klein, right? Was
Yes.
saying in this book, is that Jean Klein was referring to how an object, a perception,
Yes.
as it vanishes, leads to the experience of consciousness. You see?
Yeah.
This morning was a little bit different. It was different in that sense that this meditation starts as an experiment.
Mhm.
It's an experiment which is not the same as the way we live daily life. It was an experiment whereby we minimize the level of activity of the body and the mind.
Mhm.
So it's a little artificial, right? Because in normal life, we need to move and we need to think. And the trick of this exercise is double. Number one, it acts as a revelator. It reveals the resistances that are there, that reflect, if you will, the stubbornness of the sense of separation. As our endeavor in this experiment is to be without a goal, without striving for something in the future, we have to stay with the now. But this is uncomfortable. Why? Because at that moment, the sense of separation comes back to us with some unpleasantness, and then we have to deal with it. We have to tame the unpleasantness, the boredom, the resistances. That kind of hides the peace of our true nature. And as that takes place, we go to a deeper area, and we kind of, hopefully, if we have the courage and the patience to tame in this way our ignorance, because our ignorance is not fundamental. Ignorance exists only in movement. Ignorance is a dynamism, because it's perception. Ignorance needs a set of perceptions to identify with. As we minimize, if you will, the dynamism, the kinetic energy, ignorance gets asphyxiated because it exists only as this agitation. And so we temporarily, albeit somehow artificially, experience a condition of the body and of the mind, which is in fact its natural condition, you see. But then the residual problem is that we are conducting an experiment. It's not daily life. That's why I said, okay, the trick then is whatever state of peace we have been able to achieve through the taming of ignorance as we were conducting this experiment. Now we start some activity of the mind. Like in my case, what I was doing 2 times 1, 2, 2 times 2, 4, 2 times 3, 6, etc. And then 3 times 1, 4 times 1, 4 times 2, etc. You see what I mean? And
Okay.
so it's a boring activity, right? It's an activity, but it's an experiment that as the mind is active, that doesn't affect, that which is very, you can verify. The conditions, the body and the mind ultimately have been placed in, which is a natural condition, is not affected by the presence of activities. It's a way to connect, to transition from this a little exotic, a little artificial meditation in which the sense of separation is tamed, as is not manifested, to transition to the same state with activities. And then I said, okay, raise your arm and then do all kinds of movements and see that doesn't affect the quality of the body. And what is interesting is that when you do that in that way, the quality of the movement is different. That can be observed. The movements, then they have this fluidity to them. They have this different quality, like our thoughts. So when we do this, we understand that we can transition from the meditation as a kind of artificial exercise, but then which has an extension, natural extension in our daily life. And at that time, we don't have to think in spiritual terms. You see, we are the spiritual background knowingly. So it doesn't matter what we do. We can do scientific research, we can count our money, we can move our body, we can play sports. You see, that's the idea, to integrate this meditation into daily life. So that was the second goal, if we can, or the second, goal of this experiment. The first being to reveal the residues of resistance. And the second, which is at the end, an integration of meditation into daily life, everyday life.
And even though what I read, it was a little bit different, because he was also talking about absorbing knowledge and making it part of your being. It is a common truth that consciousness is constant, right? That when I feel rooted in the self, you feel that even though things may be moving around like a roller coaster, maybe not that dramatic, but that there is movement, that there is a sense of something that is rooted and stable and doesn't fluctuate, right?
I would say that consciousness is the only continuous reality. So if we start from that, everything is discrete.
Yeah.
So that's why quantum mechanics may be deeper than general relativity.
Yeah. And just to finish that, even though it was not totally connected, what I was reading from John Klein, that it was beautiful what he described, that when we have perceptions from the outside, there is a point that gets absorbed by consciousness, right? There is a sense that comes into consciousness. And
yes, at the end of each perception, the light of presence shines. Yeah. So in fact, we move from the objective of phenomenal experience to the noumenal experience in a seamless fashion, so to speak.
It felt to me almost like a swimming pool that you throw an object. It just came this image to me that you throw an object, but at a certain point by gravity just falls in the being, right? Like just goes back to the source, something like that when I read it.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. That was helpful.
geez, gardener is here. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Francis. This may be a dumb question, but that which is hearing these words right now also includes animals, right?
Well,
They hear the words right now.
I hope I hope this sound is not too. Let me do something here. Oops. Let me really speak closer to the mic. Yeah.
Your camera needs to be focused.
Don't
Also.
worry. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm moving too much forward. Yes. Sorry about that.
I do like the colors today, though, I
Well,
have to say.
I speak closer here, so you should be less bothered by the sound. Yes. So I'm lost now. You were saying?
I was saying reality is that which is hearing these words right now. Does that not
Yeah.
also include animals that are hearing these words right now?
Well, neither animals nor humans hear the words. Consciousness
Correct.
hears the words.
Oh, yes.
Human, animals, and whatever objects are simply part of the chain of transmission of the information. But they are not the place where the buck stops, so to speak. They are not the recipient of it at the end.
It's the same recipient, no?
Yes, there is only one recipient, and there is
Mhm.
only one source, really.
Yeah.
So it's just circles. So if you think of a circle, you see, you have this visible part of the circle. You take 2 points on the circle, A and B. So there is one arc through which there is a visible communication. But there is also a back channel, which is the other portion of the circle. So it's the same here. And the back channel, as we communicate, is consciousness. So the visible channel communicates information. The invisible channel communicates the meaning. In the meaning, we are one. We are the understanding.
I'm sorry.
We have a big perturbation here. And I'm sorry. And the gardeners are innocent because they are supposed to come here on Saturday mornings because we usually have our meetings in the afternoon. So because we have this retreat, it's different today. So we have this, and I cannot kick them out because they are completely innocent. So
It's okay. It's okay. I kind of like it. I I've had an experience. I don't know why this is coming up now, but I've had an experience where I was understanding things that were beyond my education level and pay grade. And it had to do with hearing this teaching for the first time that caused my whole being to open up. And I have the sense that truly there's no local understanding, there's no local intelligence, there's no local knowledge, really, that we, by ourselves, we absolutely know nothing. And what that did for me was I had a lifetime of my mother being the smartest one, and I was the stupid one. And all of a sudden, I understood so much, and it didn't matter. And I've been telling her that my whole life. The only thing that matters is capacity to love. And that's all I wanted to say. It was beautiful, and I'm so grateful to you and this teaching.
You know, it's nice to travel light when we know that whatever we need to know will be given to us on a need to know basis. So it's like, yeah, it's like relying on the cloud instead of having to carry all this information with you on hard disks.
Mhm.
You see,
I love it,
can
love it,
travel.
love it.
Or books, on books, you know, you don't want to carry books. If you have access. Right now, I listen to music, you know, and I used to listen on vinyl recordings like that. I have a lot there, very heavy, very big. And now I have subscribed to Apple Music. You know, they are not one of my sponsors, but it's great. $10 a month. And I have access to all the music, you know. So I play stuff of my teenage years, you know, some jazz stuff. It's really fun. You know, it's beautiful, and it's very high quality now. 24 bits. I don't know, 186 kilohertz. I mean, it's very great stuff. It's beautiful, and I don't need to carry anything. So it's the same here. Everything we need to know will come to us, sometimes in strange ways, as you mentioned. You all of a sudden have access to knowledge you didn't know you had access to. Weird things get revealed to you. And you know, it's the same thing. People who make, for instance, who are truly creative as artists or scientists, you know, all of a sudden they have this revelation, something big that comes to them. Wow, you know, I didn't create that, you know, it's too big, you know, it's too extraordinary.
But then they put their name to it and they own it, or think
Yeah.
they do.
Well, everybody needs to make a buck.
But my understanding is that math was discovered, that it's not something that was invented, but actually discovered. And that made sense to me.
I think many mathematicians would agree with that. They are called Platonicians, you know, that as they discover new properties of, let's say, of the natural numbers, that they are discovering a territory which pre-existed its discovery. And I tend to think that way, you know, because it's so extraordinary, the deep connections between the various branches of mathematics, you know, between.
It's an unfolding also, no?
Between
Knowledge
geometry, algebraic geometry, number theory, and Galois groups. I mean, it's so deep. The connection between these transcendental numbers such as pi or e and
Thank you, Francis, so much.
yes, hi, Victoria.
Hi, Francis. Thank you. I would really love to come to peace with my relationship with the God idea, the God concept, and it's a concept. The reason that I don't have peace with it is that it's a concept of which we don't have a definition, and that is that it's a concept. And so when I hear it, I don't know what to do with it because I don't know what the speaker or the writer believes about it. And maybe I don't know what I believe about it, but I just have an allergy to it. And I would love your thoughts about that.
Yes, in my case, I was fortunately raised by atheist parents. And my education was in science, so that I was completely virgin regarding God. You know, I was completely open. So my God is not really the God of Michelangelo, you know, or the guy who is up in the clouds and creates the world, and or the God who is going to punish the sinners. You know, it's not a personal God. For me, my God is more the God of Spinoza. And it's interesting how Spinoza defines God. He defines first what he calls a substance. And a substance, he defines, is that which cannot not exist. In other words, if you take anything, take a computer, take a human being, take a universe, they have not always existed. And as a result, they won't exist always, right? So therefore, they don't qualify as what Spinoza calls a substance. In that sense, they are dependent on something out of which that pre-existed them and that coexists with them, but pre-existed them. And then he shows that there can only be one substance, really, with an infinity of what he calls attributes. And that is his definition of God. So there is nothing human or human-like or animal-like. God is everything and nothing, but it is not something particular. It is that which is and cannot not be. That which its essence exists.
So for you, would that mean that God is synonymous with reality?
Yes. But reality, as I define it, which is not the set of all physical objects, but rather that which is the underlying substance of all physical objects and all of everything.
Thank you.
Well, that will be it. I apologize for the noise. Thank you.